I'd been at my company for 10 years and I loved what I was doing and I loved who I was working with. But in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to do my own thing. But like it was probably my hardest career decision ever.
Hello and welcome to the Career Flipper podcast. This podcast is really just me handing you a big old permission slip to chuck the rulebook out the window and rethink your entire career. You know, just an average day. I'm Jane Dashevsky, host of this show, Furniture Flipper, and yes, after 2 years post-layoff, I'm back in the corporate world again. Well, I like to call it the investor in my dreams because I can't go back to working how I used to work. And this job keeps the lights on while I happily and messily build my furniture flipping business on the side. And for that, I am so grateful. In today's episode, you'll get to meet Jane Dashevsky from Seattle, Washington. Jane spent 10 years at Amazon. Yeah, 10 years of building her career, loving her work, loving her team. And then, well, she became a parent. 2 kids under 2. That changes things, or so I've heard. And she started asking herself the big questions. Where do I see myself long term? What do I do with all these business ideas in my head that I keep sharing with my husband? What do I really want for my family, for myself? And that entrepreneurial spark she'd always carried deep down got louder and louder until she finally made the decision to walk away from that steady paycheck and start something of her own. But it's not just anything that she started. She created the Starter Set, a service that uses AI to cut through the chaos of baby product shopping. Because, let's be honest, from what I hear from my friends that are parents, finding the right stuff from your kids is really overwhelming. It's exhausting, and honestly, it's just not the thing that you have time or brain space for. And Jane knew this from experience, and her dream was to make this whole process easier. And what I love about Jane in this episode is how real she is about the messy middle. She doesn't sugarcoat it, and she's in the thick of it right now. She just kicked this off 8 months ago, and being so honest about the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship. This conversation is about dreams and courage and resilience and choosing yourself and your family, even when the path ahead is messy and unclear, even when you doubt yourself. I think you're really going to connect with Jane's story. Let's get into the episode now. We are way back. I mean, we're talking like, what was it, 15 years? I think I calculated that correctly.
I can't count that high. Don't ask me.
Yeah. And as we were talking before, I was like, yeah, that kind of just feels like, I don't know, last week or something. So what is time? But anyways, Jane, thank you for being here on the Career Flipper. I am really excited for everyone to meet you, and also just selfishly excited to chat with you again, and love that our paths have reconnected after so many years. Tell everybody about you, who you are, and where you are and what you're doing right now. And then we're going to dive into all the juicy stuff because there's some good stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, it's wild that we've been able to reconnect. But to introduce myself, I'm Jane Dashevsky, and right now I'm in the process of building a new service for parents called the Starter Set. And what it is it is an AI-backed service that helps parents and families find just the right things for their children at the right time, personalized for their families. And, you know, I'm a mom of 2. I have 2 kids, 2.5. and a 4. I'm always like, how old are they now? But anyway, I have 2 small kids, and, you know, there's just so much mental burden that comes with having kids, and you're constantly thinking about like what they need next and trying to sort through all the stuff. And, you know, you go on Amazon or Target or whatever, Walmart, any store, and there's just so many options, and you're just left with this like analysis paralysis feeling. And so the goal was, you know, obviously we've been able to figure out personalization for social media, and there's some personalization certainly in retail, but I thought, how great would it be to have a service that like really understood you and could help you pick the stuff that you needed for your kids. And so that is what I'm building. I have a co-founder, and we're working as hard as we can to get something out, and starting with baby registries because those are 80 products deep. So,
ooh, wow. I mean, that's incredibly like the thought that went into this to not only like help other families, but like it sounds like it came from a very important place in your life of like, I don't know what I need, so why don't I figure it out? But how did this all begin? Obviously, having kids and diving into parenthood, but the career part, like how did this begin? How did your career start? How did you flip into this, Jane?
Yeah. Well, actually, for me, it was at the time I was working in like a high pressure tech job and, you know, had two kids and was trying to figure out how to balance all of that. And I was finding myself like after the day was done and the kids were asleep and like, having been able to spend some time with my husband, et cetera, like it would be midnight. And then I'd be like, oh, I have to go order something. Or like, I just noticed my son is like starting to walk. Maybe I need to like think about that. And do I need anything for him? And so I would be doing research at midnight and like looking at blogs and looking across retail sites and maybe like looking at an influencer or two. And it just felt like such a bad use of my time. Like at midnight, like that just didn't feel
Exhausting.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was exhausting. And so even just the part of like, oh, he grew out of his clothes and I need to like think about that again. You know what I mean? Like just
Hmm.
another thing on the list. And so it occurred to me that like this was probably a problem that needed some solving. And so I created a survey. My background was in product and, I had some training in marketing. And so, like, naturally, I was like, do other people have this problem? And let's go talk to some potential customers. And so, created a survey, sent it out to, parent friends. I'd been part of a mom group, sent it out to the mom group, and just asked people, like, where their pain points were, if they were spending time on this. And it came back that, like, 90% of parents were saying that research was a very painful part of their parenting prep. And so it just felt like a problem that was worth solving. And because I had experience in product from my previous work, I felt like I could kind of see and get my hands around how to solve it. And so then it was just a question of like, am I going all in on this? Like, does it make sense to do that? Should I go all in on this? And, that's when the questioning process starts, obviously, like when you make those big kind of career decisions. I'd been at my company for 10 years and I loved what I was doing and I loved who I was working with. But in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to do my own thing. But like it was probably my hardest career decision ever.
Yeah. It's a huge pivot from going from the safety and security of a stable job that you've had for over a decade with colleagues that you actually enjoy being around
Mm-hmm.
and a work that you enjoy doing. And then to
Yeah.
know that there's this entrepreneurial spirit kind of buried down deep. And I'm kind of curious because I think a lot of us, well, at least you and me, we feel this way, and people listening probably can relate to this. There's sometimes that spark that's buried below, and we feel it, but we just like, okay, no, I got to keep the stable job, I got to keep the traditional path, I got to like, I have kids, I got to make sure that there's a paycheck coming in. But what was it about that feeling that you had of wanting to do something on your own that made that feel, and I'm going to say this, the cost of staying may have been more than the cost of going type of thing, where when did you know that it was the right decision to go out and do your own thing versus staying in that kind of stability?
Uh, yeah. Well, I'll answer it in a couple of ways.
Okay.
But one, I don't know, depending on your personality, and mine is like this, I don't know that you ever like know that something is the right decision, right? Like until later down the road. Sometimes you're like, which decision will I be more comfortable living with? But like
Mhm.
using the term right is so loaded and it's so hard. And like sometimes, even now, I'm like, did I make the right decision? What's the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I don't know that you like ever get the sense of like there's a right. I actually don't know if in life there are like right answers, right? There's just different options. And so like the way that I thought about it was a couple of things. Like it was a hard decision. And so there were like a couple of thought experiments I was doing with myself to
Yeah.
try to figure out what I wanted to do. And, one of them was like, I like to think about like which path would I regret least, right? And like which thing would I be most proud of? Not to say that like what I was doing at my work, I wasn't proud of, I was, but like, if I looked back on my life from, I don't know, 80 or whatever, which thing would I be most excited to tell someone I accomplished? And for me, it had always been my dream to do my own business, to be able to grow something from the ground up. And so, I felt like I had to take that chance. I'd been in a job for a decade, right? Like that'd been the longest I'd ever been anywhere. And it was longer than I ever imagined myself being there, which is a testament to how great it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, I just really needed to think about like ultimately in the fullness of time, like what would be most fulfilling? What would I be excited to tell my kids about? What would I be excited to look back on? So that there was that frame.
Yeah.
I was also really fortunate to be in a position career-wise where I could take a step back. Like I between myself and my husband, we could do it in a financially safe way, even though
Yeah.
sometimes that's still panic inducing. But,
Yeah.
we could do it. And my husband was very supportive because he'd also known that it was my dream. Like he'd heard me rattle off thousands of business ideas over the years.
Yeah.
Maybe not thousands. I like to exaggerate. But
Yeah.
so there was that. And then I remembered actually getting career advice from like senior leaders at my previous company. And I remember one of them saying something like, sometimes you got to like do the thing that you're scared of because that's the thing that makes you grow. And that was also something that I thought about because like at my last company, I'd been in kind of the team and the position I was in for 8 years of the 10.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I knew it really well. I felt really comfortable, even though there was always something to like grow and stretch into, but like, I felt pretty confident and it felt like it was time to
Yeah.
push myself into something that was like scary and uncomfortable. And boy, it has been.
That makes so much sense. And I want to jump back to something about being right because you're so right. You're so right that there is no way to know until you do it. And then years later, you have the kind of perspective to be able to look back and be like, oh, yeah, that was the right choice. Or, oh, no, it was wrong. But you just don't know. And to really just take that chance, which it sounds like you were like, this is it. Like, this is where I'm going to grow. This is where I'm going to be able to help others. This is where I'm going to be able to help myself, not have these, midnight search parties where I'm looking for.
I wouldn't call them a party.
Yeah, yeah. There's
Yes.
probably no confetti here. There's no cake. Well, maybe I don't know, but you really leaned into that, and I think that's incredibly important to note for so many people who are like on the edge of like, do I do it or not? You don't know if it's going to be right. And there is no right. So just erase that completely.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it like when you put in your notice that you were leaving? What was that like for you? Can you talk about that and tell that?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I feel like it was like a breakup. You know what I mean? Like, I feel embarrassed about this, but whatever. You like put so much of yourself into work, right? Depending on who you are. I certainly do. I can't do things even 80% of the way. Like I go 150. And so like I'd put myself into that work. And it becomes like a part of your identity. And like, you see people you work with more than you see your family, really.
Yeah.
And the kind of job I was into, it was like, you could be on really at any hour, right? Because if somebody needed something or there was an email flying around, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just our work culture sometimes in the US. But so it was really hard. And I'd been there so long. And it felt like the beginning of something, but also the end of something. And it was different because I wasn't going to a secure next job. So that also felt really hard because it was like I wasn't sure I was making the right decision, quote unquote. I felt a little uncertain.
Yeah.
So it was bittersweet, I would say. Like, it was exciting to like have made that step toward
Yeah.
a dream that I've had, and hopefully it all pans out. Remains to be seen, I guess. But it was also super hard, you know, and yeah, there were tears shed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that. I know that's a really pivotal moment and very personal moment. And I think, a lot of people who are on the podcast and talk about flipping their careers are doing it because they don't like their jobs. They're burnt out or whatever. But this is a very different scenario where you did like it. It was a good job. You enjoyed it. You liked who you work with. And so I really want to emphasize that for anyone listening, because whether you like your job or not, you can still make these decisions, whether or not you know it's the right decision. But if it feels authentic to you, then it sounds like that might be the direction you need to go, whatever is pushing you forward. And for you, there was more of a calling of like, I want to start something on my own. I've had this thought in my mind for, years, and now you're doing it. And I mean, maybe you heard feedback, but I bet some other people, when you put in that notice, were like, ooh, if Jane can do it, maybe I can. And like, maybe that inspired other people on your team. But I just think it's a big, bold decision to put in that. And then you leaped into it. And I think what's so cool about having you on too is that you are in the middle of this right now. So it's not like you did this 10 years ago and you've been doing this for a while. Like, Jane, like, how long have you been at this right now?
well, I've been at it, I guess, formally for about 8 months. I want to say 8.
Okay. Yeah.
But part of it was just like seeing if I could make something that like even feasibly addressed what I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
And then part of it was like I was really convinced that for me in this journey, it was super important to have a co-founder, and that like, one of the things I think about too is that it's not just about whether I can personally be successful or not be successful. Like, I feel very strongly that this product, service, idea should be out in the world.
Yeah.
Like, however that happens, it should be out in the world, because this, like, finding stuff for your kids and just retail shopping in general is so painful and so unnecessarily painful. And like, it feels like the pendulum swung very deeply from like the days of mom and pop shops on the corner that didn't have enough selection to overwhelming amounts of selection to like not being able to even understand what you need. And so to me, it feels like this thing needs to be out in the world. And so when I think about that, I'm like, well, what can give me the greatest chance of it really being out in the world? And I knew for me that was a co-founder. So, I went through the process of looking for a co-founder, and that took me a couple months.
Yeah.
I went through the process of trying to take this thing that was in my head, and like, I'm not visual at all. So like finding someone who could help me visualize it and like design an experience, because that could also help make it more real as well. And so like there were kind of steps along the way, but I've formally been at it for 8 months.
You know those nights when it's late, you're wiped out, but your brain is like, yeah, nope, we're staying up. Or the afternoons when you have so much to do and you really want to focus, but the distractions and the to-do list in your head just will not stop. Yeah, I get it. I'm right there with you. That's why I wanted to share something that I've been using. It's called the Dwellspring mobile app. It puts over 300 professionally engineered soundscapes in your pocket that are helping over 1.3 million people every week to achieve restful sleep, mindful presence, and productive flow. and I'm one of them. You can create your own mixes from scratch, generate custom noise colors like white or brown or pink, even build your own binaural beats, all available offline without an internet connection and always ad and interruption free. And a fun fact, Dwellspring actually started as a podcast. A tired dad was just trying to get his newborn to sleep, and now that show has over 300 million downloads. The app takes what worked there and makes it even more customizable for you in your busy life. If you want to check it out, download the app Dwellspring, like Wellspring with a D, on the Apple App Store or Google Play. And if you use the promo code FLIPPER, you'll get a free month of premium. That's DWELLSPRING, promo code FLIPPER for a free month of premium. Dwellspring, reclaim your rest. Now let's get back to the episode with Jane. 8 months. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So you put in your notice, you left your job, and here you are. It's been 8 months and you're going at it, and you took you 2 months to find the right co-founder, and you're doing it. And at this,
maybe more than 2 months.
Maybe more
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah. A couple months.
It's a blur. It's all a blur.
Yeah, it is a blur.
I think this is, okay, this might seem like I'm switching gears here a little bit, but one of the things that really stands out to me that you are doing is that the repurposing of your skills, Jane. Like, you had this job for 10 years and all of the things that led up to that job, before that job, in your career path, like the skills that you built, and whether it's product, marketing, all the things, and tech that you worked in, you're essentially repurposing them for this. And obviously learning a lot more new things, but you knew what to look for in a co-founder because you've worked on teams before and you knew what you needed. You knew what you needed to build because you've worked in tech before. And I love that, because sometimes when we take these leaps and we're like, okay, what are we doing? We think we're starting from scratch, but we really have so many important skills from our experience, and we're not just doing this completely blind, even if it is in a completely different industry. So I'm curious, can you speak to a little bit of the repurposing of skills that you have, that you're finding that you're using now all the time, that you're like, oh, I did this before, and it feels maybe a little familiar, and then maybe some of the ones that you're learning? Like, can you just touch on that a bit? Because I think it's a common theme for people to leap, and they're like, what am I doing? Well, you actually do know more about what you're doing than you think.
Yeah, I think that's like a super valuable point. You know what I mean? Like, it's just because I've actually felt this. So prior to being in my previous job for 10 years, like, I'd actually switched not just jobs, but careers every 2 years.
And that's about right for tech. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I went into product and tech, like, I had gone and gotten an MBA and, a dual degree with an MBA and a tech degree. But like, I didn't even know product management was a job. Yeah. Like, I remember coming into my first day at my old company, and like, my manager there asking me to do a roadmap, and I had zero, which is like a basic product skill. Yeah. So, like, organize what we're going to work on, right? Like, just basic product skill. No idea what that was. Like, not a clue.
Yeah.
Anyway, but my point is, I digress. My point is that what's interesting in every career step that you take is like these layers of things that, like, all these experiences you've had that you build on, right? Something that I've found really fun about this new step is, so in this space that I'm in, which is, parents, moms, expecting moms, it's super important to actually create not just a useful service, and we're in the process of building that, but also useful content. Because most moms are, looking to their friends for advice. They're using social media. They're following content that they like. And some of my previous jobs were actually marketing through creating content. And my bachelor's degree was in journalism. And my first job out of college was as an editor for a magazine. And so what's super interesting is, like, right now, while we're in the process of building, where I'm using the skills that I had from product and tech and working with an engineering team and all of that, I also am weirdly leaning back into all my journalism skills, right? Because part of what I'm doing is creating content for moms. We have a blog on thestarterset.com and inspired by you partially.
No way.
Yeah, inspired by you partially. We also have a podcast, which is called Getting Started with Baby. And in that, like, I'm interviewing all sorts of parenting voices, whether they're sleep coaches or OBGYNs or other moms. And like that leans back into the journalism skills. So it's like this really interesting tapestry of all the stuff that you've done before, right? You just don't know how random skills are going to impact you. And the other thing that I've been doing, which I'm generally terrified of, is, so part of what you do when you have a startup and you're potentially seeking funding or incubation or support is you go and you like start pitching, which means you're speaking in front of a bunch of people.
Ooh, yeah.
And, trying to seem charismatic and like you have it together. And like I hadn't done that since my MBA program, because in my previous company, that wasn't like, we didn't really present like that. We presented more, in the written form. And so I hadn't had to do that in quite some time. But I was leaning back into what I'd learned in my MBA program, like to talk louder than seems natural. You know what I mean? Because it makes you sound more excited and like, I don't know, weirdly gets rid of your nerves. But anyway, so yeah, you just pick up stuff from everywhere.
Exactly. That was so well said. And the word tapestry that you use, I think really captures that so well. It is all these things woven together, and you don't know how they're going to show up or when they're going to show up or how you're going to be able to repurpose them for whatever new path in life, whether it's a career, a hobby, or just, I don't know, daily living. Like you just don't know. And so having those there and knowing that you're not starting from scratch, you do have a lot to build upon. And so you took the leap and you're in it. And where are you now? Like, as far as building it goes, what's like a day to day like for you now? Like, cause you're working remote at home, right? So you're with your kids. And so you're also
the kids are thankfully in daycare.
There we go. There we go. And like, what is a normal day like for you as you kind of work through this and build this?
Yeah. So, I mean, the nice thing is it can be varied. I have time to kind of like dig in and pursue things that I'm like trying to get better at or interested in or whatever. But most days include me trying to figure out Instagram, which is not it's not natural for me. So there's that somewhat painful journey. And, creating content, looking for guests for the podcast, because we're kind of doing parallel tracks between me and my co-founder right now and like some collaboration. So on the one hand, we're working on kind of building up the content and marketing and community side of what we're doing as we're building actively. On the other end, I'm working really closely with my co-founder who's responsible for the engineering portion of what we're doing, creating requirements, reviewing how the results are looking so far, planning for testing and beta with customers or potential customers. So there's that part. Occasionally it's looking through, the startup community. I'm in the Seattle area. So the startup community in the Seattle area to figure out like, is there an event I should be a part of? Should I be doing a pitch? Should I be talking to someone, going to some startup meetups and things like that. So it can be kind of varied.
Yeah. So it keeps you on your toes and you're busy and you're constantly in the exploration phase and testing phase. And, let's say a year from now, where do you see yourself and your co-founder at? Like where's the vision going? Like if you were, like we were talking this time next year, like what would you be saying?
Well, within a year, oh boy, there better be a live product. So, we're hoping to have a live end-to-end product available for customers in the next couple of months. We should be ready to start testing in the next few weeks. And the goal is to see how customers respond and to really help. We're starting by creating a fully customized, personalized baby registry. And so the goal with that is that we can help expecting parents get through their baby registry phase with much less stress, with much less research. Like, there's this mind-boggling statistic that it can take, upwards of 40 hours just to do a baby registry. Like, that's nuts. You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
Isn't it? Yeah. I mean, so there's that. I mean, that there's like 80 plus products you're looking through that, like, many of them you've never even heard of. Like, I'm trying to think of one where I was like, what on earth is that thing? I don't know. Still, some parents, I'll be like, have you heard of a wipe warmer? They don't know what that is. There's just like stuff that if you haven't gone through it, even if you're going through it a second time or third time or whatever, like, it's just a learning curve all the time. So the goal is within a year that we're actually actively able to help parents reduce that research burden and decision fatigue.
Ooh. Yeah. I mean, the hours that you're going to save people. I mean, I didn't realize that that's how much work went into a registry. Because I will say, as an auntie, or, especially auntie to whether my actual family or friends' kiddos, looking at these registries, I don't even know what to pick. I always am like, what's the best thing I could get for them? I don't know. Half of these things are, and if I get clothes, like, is that going to be helpful? Like, so even like looking at it from the other angle of like, if I could look at a registry as an aunt and know that this is actually going to help them, that saves me time and stress too of like buying this. And so it's kind of like this across the board supporting families in a way where they're actually going to get the things that they need and be able to use. Because it also seems like every day there's some new kid product out there.
Yeah.
And you lose something or other. And I mean, what did you say? A wipe warmer? Like what? Like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
heard of that.
I mean, it's just, well, and some of the stuff is like, you don't actually need it, but you don't know that you don't need it.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I mean, it's just really hard. Like, I've had friends who told me that they were so overwhelmed, they opted out. They had their husbands look at it. They were like, can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is very overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. It's a lot. And you're doing something to solve this, and you're in it, and, on your own career path, you're building it and you're taking that leap. Do you have a time frame that you're like, if this isn't done by X, then you are reevaluating different things? Obviously, that's not going to be the case. But I think sometimes when people leap into these, we build this in our mind of like, I'm going to give it a year, or I'm going to give it 5 years, or whatever it is. Maybe how much savings do you have? Like, I'm just curious if that is something that applies at this point, or you're just like, I'm all in. There's no other option.
No. I feel like there was I don't know, maybe it was a quote from Jeff Bezos or something, about how like you have to both, as a founder, you have to both be like like optimistic that it's going to succeed, but also realistic that like 90% of the time these things fail. So like, it's hard to hold that duality in your head. And that's part of the challenge of doing something like this. But yes, of course I have gates on like, does this make sense? Right. So I think I am sort of waiting to see, like, we've broken it down. So like the idea is that we want to build for phases past the baby registry, but we've broken it down to like, let's release one thing and see how it does and see how it helps parents and see where we take it from there. If that doesn't resonate with parents, and certainly we're doing research along the way to like convince ourselves that this makes sense to put time into, but like if it ends up not resonating or whatever, I mean, that's certainly a big signal, and that's not necessarily time bound, although, we want to make sure we have something that's achievable to build within, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. And then for me, like all in time wise, it feels like I need to get to some sort of financial solvency within, I don't know, maybe a 2-year window or something like that. I think about it like, to me, it's like as if I'm going back and, creating like an educational opportunity for myself. And so I'm like, well, I sank, whatever, 2 years into my MBA. Like
Yeah.
I'm willing to put, not sank, but like I put
Yeah.
2 years into an MBA and I'm willing to think about it in the same way, in the sense that this is like a journey of like learning a whole bunch of new skills,
Mhm.
having different experiences, and I'm willing to think
Mhm.
about it in that same light.
Yeah. That is a great perspective to have on it. And just to do it. Like you're doing it. You're taking the steps. And I'm really curious, Jane, of, from what you're learning about just going for it and building in these gates and just, testing everything out, experimenting, having the plans and structure and strategy that you're building. For someone listening right now who might be in their job and maybe they love it, maybe they don't, but they feel that same feeling you felt. I want to do something on my own one day. Do you have a piece of advice for them that might guide them on how to really be okay with that decision, that it's okay to want to do something on your own one day? What would you say to that person?
I mean, I guess I would say two things, which is one, like, listen, you only live once. Like, do the things that you feel like are exciting to you. But, like, also, my husband at some point when I was trying to, like, make this decision would always say things like, you gotta, like, treat life more like a video game sometimes. Like, take it a little less seriously. Like, if this doesn't work out, you'll do something else, whatever, and like sometimes it's hard to have that perspective. So one, like decide what matters to you in life and, whether you want to pursue something, what you'll regret least, etc. The other thing is like really deeply know yourself. You know what I mean? Like take stock of yourself and your emotional bandwidth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because if you do this, for most people, success will not be overnight. You will have many, many moments of doubt, like many.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out the things that pull you out of the troughs. You know what I mean? My husband likes to make fun of me because I'm like a roller coaster, like peak, trough. Luckily, I
Yeah.
think my co-founder is more even keeled, but I'm not.
Yeah.
And so I've had to think about like, what are those things that will get me through a day when I'm feeling like, what have I, like, am I doing anything? Is this going anywhere? Am I yelling into a void? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It might be something like, take yourself out to lunch that day. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Or I got myself these like affirmation cards, and I like
Yeah.
pull one out every day and it'll say things like, you're living your best life or whatever. I don't know.
Yes.
Just something
Yeah.
to like recenter me outside of my own head.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is, that's not what will work for everybody. But like you got to know yourself well enough to know like if faced with this, like, are you going to be able to weather the extreme uncertainty and the weight
Mm-hmm.
and the not knowing if it will succeed
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and the trying to take positive
Yeah.
and trying to take small signals from the universe, even if like you're not sure if you're on the right track. So like know what you want out of life and know yourself. I would sum it up as that.
That is really great. Like, just such real advice. I mean, it's so true. The storms are no joke. And the self doubt, when you're not sure exactly what you're doing, it's going to like crush you at some points. And
Yeah.
it's like, what do you do then? Can you weather that? Because this thing that you're creating needs you to be able to weather that in order to grow and move forward. And you're doing it. You're freaking doing it, Jane.
Yeah.
And you're setting the example to all of us. And the fact that you're like in it right now is just, it's really inspiring, because I think a lot of the people I talk with are folks who have done it and they're, past it. And it's like, but wait, these moments when we're in it, because girl, I'm right there with you. I'm in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of it too. And I am like figuring this out. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to try this and keep going. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing all of this with us. And I'm so curious too, like if people want to get involved with some of the testing, or they want to learn more about the starter set, listen to the podcast, read the blog, where can they connect with you? How can they find you? Where are all the places to go?
Yeah, I would love that if they'd like to connect with us. So I would say if they're interested in signing up or testing or getting the latest on what's going on with us, go to thestarterset.com. We have a sign up list there. And that's also where our blog is. If they're interested in hearing more about the parenting experience or from parenting voices from across the spectrum, they can find us on Getting Started with Baby. That's a podcast that's available Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and also can be found on our site. And then also we're on Instagram at The Starter Set. So feel free to follow us there as well.
Absolutely. This is great. And everything will be in the show notes. I hope people connect with you. Jane, thank you so much again. I love this chat. I loved connecting with you and just so glad we kept in touch over all these years.
Thank me too. Thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
Thanks for hanging out with me and Jane on this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. You'll find all the ways to connect with Jane in the show notes. And if this conversation lit even the tiniest spark or made you feel a little less like you're out here flailing at it alone, the best way to keep this energy going is to hit follow, drop a review, and send this to a friend who's also mid-career plot twist. That's how we grow this messy, magical little corner of our flipping community. At the end of the day, here's what I want you to remember. You're not behind, you're not broken, and you are definitely not too late. Starting again is always on the table, and that first tiny step might feel terrifying. You might ugly cry through it, but it could be the step that will change everything. So go on. Take the first tiny step, even if it's messy, especially if it's messy. Because really, what's the best that could happen?